Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Welcome once again to the NPTEL module on strategic trade and protectionism, theories and empirics. We are on 31st lecture and week number 7 to explain the most important conflicts among the developing countries and developed countries of the WTO member countries while practicing trade restrictions. So, here the topic accordingly is chosen. So, to start the discussion on non-tariff measures or the barriers, in the very first lecture we are supposed to understand the recent facts and the conflicts among the member countries. So, myself Dr. Pratap Mohanty, as a faculty member in the Department of Humanities and Social Sciences, IIT Roorkee. Now, this is the lecture I have already delivered maybe years back in one of the ministry training for Indian revenue servants, as well as given certain modules to the to the CPDHE Delhi University as part of the UGC capacity building program. So, this is the one I have already covered and I have added and revised the details very in a very updated manner. Now, let us understand why MFA the non-tariff barriers are very important in the present context. This is because of the fact that non-tariff barriers are very difficult to assess or measure, and usually they are different from tariff, and tariffs are transparent, whereas these are non-transparent, because often the case these are not visible and the strategies imposed are usually hidden. So, there is no clear cut definition of non-tariff barriers yet defined in WTO rounds. We specifically separate the WTO safeguarding measures in three important indicators. One is called anti-dumping duties, safeguards and countervailing duties. So far as these instruments are concerned, they are collectively referred to as trade defense measures. So, now question is, what do you mean by trade defense and trade restrictions? So, we will clarify when we are defining different types of non-tariff barriers, we will clarify in the next lecture. So, now so far as these issues are concerned, definition, as I told you, definition of anti is not so clear. So, therefore, here it includes only direct border controls that do not represent tariff increases. It includes such as quotas, bans or licensing requirements, border controls related aspects. This convention also accounts for policies that only indirectly affect trade, such as discriminatory instruments, public procurement and localization and policies or state aid measures. So, these are some of the ways by which the data is being explained. So far as the type of data and its availability is concerned, I think TRANS is one of the most important source for referring in the context of NTBs, non-tariff barriers. TRANS stands for Trade Analysis Information System database, which is jointly developed by WTO, UNCTAD, the ITC and the World Bank, and this is called one of the biggest or largest database on non-tariff measures. So, these are the important organizations which are responsible for developing the trans data for especially referred for non-tariff measures. The Global Trade Alert Database GTA clearly distinguishes between two set of non-tariff measures called discriminatory and non-discriminatory measures, and this is the clarity not addressed in any other database. And therefore, this database leads to multiple entries regarding SPA standards and TBT's measures. SPA stands for sanitary and phytosanitary standards. TBT is called, there are some technical barriers to trade measures which are not necessarily protectionist, but could also be trade enhancing. So, therefore, defense is more important, may not be undermining trade of others. So, this is one set of argument very important so far as GTA database is concerned. Second set of arguments is that the non-tariff barriers according to GTA is not restricted merely to trade policies, it may be through various other practices. So, the TRIAN database as well as ITTIP database which are developed by WTO actually restrict their collection of NTBs or non-tariff NTMs explicitly to the trade policies, not to the practices. So, further both TRIANS and ITIP as developed by WTO rely largely on the notifications of WTO or the official informations, which makes under reporting of the actual degree of protectionism and that is very likely. So far as the non-tariff measure business surveys are concerned, there are many business surveys conducted by very corporate houses, very business houses which are largely published by ITC, but these only provide very detailed information on how specific non-tariff measures affect businesses, but there are limitations. They are only conducted country wise survey, purely specifically refer to a country, and therefore are not suitable for cross country comparison. So, the ITC survey therefore is not widely accepted by the researchers, by the analysts or for understanding to the trade conflicts in the context of non-tariff measures. So, the greater greater drawbacks of the GTA as we already referred database are that it only contains information on non-tariff areas, especially after 2009, not before that. Saudi Arabia was listed as the least protectionist country among the G20 economies in 2015. Now, look at this is one of the case to be verified so far as non-tariff measures are concerned. Now, suddenly in 2016 only after a state development fund which has made information about all loans and financial grants given to domestic companies, when it is publicly available, when it was publicly available, it jumped to its rank so far as protectionism is concerned, jumped to 7th in the world in 2016 as per the reference Evenet and Freeze article 2016 page number 38. Now, similarly the governments differ in how they announce policies, therefore, the earlier database are not important sources. So, GTA is more important. As noted by GTA, the US government tends to announce each policy separately, while European government tends to announce policies in bundles. Okay. This is again how GTA collate the data based on different information and different policy announcements so far as non-tariff measures are concerned. Now, it is also important to note that GTA data which is used in this analysis cannot provide a comprehensive overview of all trade hurdles faced by the exporters. It has limitations also. So, the policy interventions that account the commercial flow of services, labor migration and investment are also not considered. Commercial flow of services or labor related migration and investment are also not counted in the GTA. In 22, I mean in the latest figure, out of the total 214 countries, at least I mean countries have at least once they have been affected by protectionist policy. It has been observed that 214 countries, at least each of the countries face once, 214 countries due to which affects protectionist policies. Now, those are the backdrop to the understanding to the understanding of non-tariff measures. Now, let us go by the facts, which is the content of this particular lecture. Now, as per the figures from GTA, a global trade alert database, which is better than that of the TRINES in certain regards. The figures are restricted to 2009 to 2016. Before that, there was no analysis made. Now, based on the figures and collated from various sources, the number of non-tariff barriers countries in force from this duration are presented here. Now, it seems is a clear rise over different periods. Now, till the latest period, 2,421 non-tariff barriers are actually recorded in the list of measures, non-tariff measures. Now, in the initial year which is actually very less. So, over the time it is increasing. It is observed that China has actually raised number of complaints as also related to the non-tariff barriers. So, the number of new protectionist intervention by type is also mentioned, which type are more. As per the global trade alert database is concerned. Now, if you look at the type, tariff changes is highlighted in green color, trade defense is in red, non-tariff barriers is in blue. Now, tariff changes over the time by number only 91, it was the latest. Earlier it was so huge, in the different member countries could able to minimize this in the recent times for tariff. There are trade defense measures also, we will discuss those types in detail. Also there have been there has been a fall in the recent years so far as trade defense is concerned. Now, so far as non-tariff barriers are concerned, this has been actually rising over time, but recently again there has been slight fall, but still the numbers are much higher than other two categories. In every year these are much higher. So, therefore, this is very important part of the discussion so far as non-tariff barriers are concerned. Over the past month, there has been a steady rise in the international anti-rhetoric around the world, as I already said. In fact, already after the dramatic collapse of international trade in the wake of financial crisis 2007 and 8, especially there have been a dramatic collapse of the fall of the trade. And lastly, there was a common fear that government may respond to domestic economic challenges by increasing tariffs and other trade barriers to protect their economy since the recent financial crisis. And one of the big difference in how countries reacted to the recent global crisis 2007 and 8 of this 21st century in contrast to the crisis of the last century has been a stronger cooperation in international trade policies under the shelter of WTO that has successfully prohibited a surge in border tariff. So, WTO has been proactive in restricting number of restrictions made by member countries. Now, let us understand which country by which way they are imposing the non-tariff measures. Average most favored nation tariff across different nations, different regions. Now, average applied MFN in 2000 and applied MFN in 2015. It has been calculated that the BRICS countries or the China in 2000 it is too high, I mean the fall is very huge in so far as average MFN status is concerned. There are two rates we have already defined. Usually MFN rates is much lower than that of the bind rate. Whereas the OECD the rates are very low. Now, so far as the global merchandise trade development is concerned, now merchandise trade from 1980 to 2016, it has been a rise over years. There has been slowdown due to the economic financial crisis in 2007-8, aftermath of 2008 there has been a major fall. Again the country's trade picked off, and recently there has been little sluggish rate of trade, but that would be minus compared to other changes. Now, annual growth rate is emphasized, is explained with the help of line diagram indicated here. So, it is the calculation not ours, it is the calculation of the World Development Indicators of the World Bank. Now, what it counts, how to read those counts. Now, the first interpretation is protectionism in international trade has been on the rise, that is for sure. So, there has been a strong increase in the non-tariff barriers that aimed at reducing imports. Since 2009, only 20% of all imported protectionist interventions can be attributed to the increase in tariff. Whereas in contrast, non-tariff barriers accounted for an average of 55% of all implemented protectionist interventions. The usage of non-tariff barriers increased steadily related to the trade defense measures, which I already explained. What others? High income countries increasingly use non-tariff barriers. Is it true or not? Increasingly use non-tariff barriers instead of tariff barriers. Though in the tariff there has been major fall, the developing countries are actually largely responsible for increasing the tariff barriers. Now, let us examine how high income countries are responsible for practicing non-tariff barriers. The usage of non-tariff barriers is highly correlated with the high income countries, as we have already mentioned. The implementation T is missing here, you can correct it. The implementation of non-tariff barriers substantially varies across countries. Implementation of non-tariff barriers substantially varies across countries, it is not uniform. United States implemented by far the largest number of non-tariff barriers. With close to 800 non-tariff barriers, the US government implemented is twice as much protectionist policies as the Indian government. So, Indian government is also very famous so far as protectionist policy is concerned, but in the non-tariff various measures, the number of protections are doubled in double as compared to Indian one in US. So, where India is ranked second, so far as protectionist non-tariff measures are also concerned. The two BRICS economies like India and Russia are ranked second and third respectively among the countries that implemented the most non-tariff barriers, with 310 and 204 implemented measures. So, India followed to 310 different varieties of non-tariff barriers, whereas Russia followed 204 measures of non-tariff barriers. Larger European economies like Germany, UK and France implemented 50 to 100, around 50 to 100 non-tariff barriers, which is only about 1/10 of the amount of non-tariff barriers implemented by United States. So, United States is very protective over the time, especially in the segment of non-tariff barriers. Now, what about subsidies and state aid measures which are also increasingly applied? So, it is said that subsidy and state aid measures make up the largest number of implemented non-tariff barriers in the consular database. Among the non-tariff barriers, subsidies and state aid actually accounts for highest. These measures are mainly driven by extensive provision of financial grants provided by the countries for domestic companies that discriminate against foreign competitors. So, usually financial grants are the direction by which they are discriminating against others. Over such financial grants, 500 such type have been provided in the period 2009 to 2017. So, 500 different grants, financial grants are actually given in this period. Other important subsidies in state aid instruments have also been made, like state loans, bailouts, taxes or social insurance reliefs are also equally important. So, localization requirements in public procurements are the second most often applied non-tariff barriers, with over 360 implemented restrictions. So, guys, how you need to prepare for it? Some of the questions might be asked. What is in objective questions, you have to prepare very carefully, because these are the segment, these are the PPTs which are going to be very useful for your preparation for exam. Especially questions will be like from 2009 to 2017, how many financial grants have been provided as a measure of non-tariff barriers. You may write down over 400, over 300, over 500, over 1000. The right answer is over 500. Similarly, which is the most important aspect of indicator of non-tariff barriers? It is subsidies and state aid. Now, which is the country, if you try to understand correctly, which is the country practicing highest number of non-tariff barriers? It is the US, which is double the figure than that India's. So, say second and third ranked countries in this regard is India and Russia, we have already explained. Now, so far as non-tariff barriers which significantly affect trade, it has been observed by some authors that the non-tariff barriers actually reduce trade significantly. On the average, bilateral imports decrease in response to the implementation of at least one non-tariff barrier by 12%. So, bilateral imports actually decrease due to at least one non-tariff barrier by 12%, which is a huge percentage. Similarly, I mean trade decrease on average yearly bilateral trade by 11%. I mean over yearly average it is 11% if at least one trade defense measure is implemented. So, however, non-tariff barriers are used substantially more often than trade defense measures. We will discuss which are under trade defense, which are under trade barriers. Include I mean basically trade defense include anti-dumping, anti-subsidy and safeguard measures. So far as the latest figures are concerned on these lines, let us have a comparison. Trade defense and non-tariff barriers are highlighted in different colors. Red indicates trade defense, whereas blue indicates non-tariff barriers, whereas tariffs are in green. We have already seen that tariffs are much lower by percentage or by number in the WTO database. These are collated by World Trade Alert database. Now, over the time the non-tariff barriers are much higher as against many other indicators. In the recent time it is even increasing. Similarly, looking at the number of implemented non-tariff barriers by type, which type is very important from 2009 to 2017. We have seen that financial grant is much higher. We have already seen 500 here, near about 500 financial grants are actually given in these periods. Followed by state loan, bailout, least is state aid, then in kind grant or financial assistance abroad. So, these are quite lesser. So far as subsidies and state aid is concerned. Regarding import and export controls are concerned, like export tax forms the highest. Export tax forms the highest during this period, near about 200, followed by other indicators like if you look at other indicators, trade finance, export ban, tax based export incentives, import related non-tariff measures. So, they represent steady fall, I mean especially in other indicators. Now, you look at the highest is actually trade finance related support, export tax related support, which is actually are the controls for imports. Now, similarly, import ban, import licensing requirements, export quota are also equally important. Now, looking at other indicator like public procurement, public procurement and localization policies, we need to understand that how those localization policies are actually restricting trade. So, localization policies and public procurement policies, look at these categories. Public procurement localization is much higher as against public procurement access. Similarly, local sourcing is much higher as against local labor related support. If you look at other instrument and capital controls, instrument are quite which are instrument unclear, I mean instrument or SPS as I mentioned earlier, technical barriers to trade are recently debated and discussed largely. This is very important. So, what about capital controls is related to price stabilization and competitive depreciation are also important direction by which countries have been actually supported by the member countries in order to restrict the trade. Now, here is the diagram, here is the map which clearly highlight the countries having non-tariff practices, non-tariff barriers imposed by countries from the duration 2009 to 2017. The deepest color highlight the highest number of non-tariff barriers imposed by the member countries. Now, look at the highest, as I already mentioned, highest is actually observed in US, followed by the nearly half of the US imposition of non-tariff barriers by India and Russia. So, the lowest are actually observed in other countries. Now, this is very important because of the fact that this database simply does not count the official notification, it also collate other notification, other practices. So, whereas TRINE's database only includes official notification, it undermines many important facts within. Now, so far as non-tariff measures are concerned, now we have got a clear idea that those countries are actually restricting in various forms. European countries largely are not restricting through non-tariff measures. Now, look at the countries by income and their practices for different restrictions, and their share for defense measures or their share for non-tariff measures. Non-tariff measures here is highlighted in blue color, green color for tariff and defense measure in red. So far as high income countries are concerned, these are high income countries are concerned, tariff as we already said it is much lower, whereas the high income countries non-tariff barriers are much higher. Now, looking at as a comparison to this to the low income countries, tariff measures are comparatively much higher as against the non-tariff measures. Similarly, among lower middle income countries, the difference is not much higher, but here the difference is much higher. Among upper middle countries, non-tariff measures are higher than that of the tariff measures. So, what we have inferred from this diagram from the original report of GTA, we are also referring this institute work through GTA, that the high income countries practices much higher non-tariff barriers against the tariff barriers. Now, here is the number of times a country is affected by implementation of non-tariff barriers. Number of times a country is affected between this 2009 to 2017. Now, look at how the countries are affected largely. It is China which is affected much higher. Similarly, these portion US and in Canada are affected largely, followed by of course India, then Australia. Developed countries are actually affected. Wherever the trade flows are much higher, the implementation of this actually affects largely to those countries. Now, Russia is not so much affected because of some treaties with Russia with some other countries. So, therefore, it is very important to refer. Now, what about number of protectionist intervention by type and sector? We also try to look at in which sector the protectionism is much higher. So far as non-tariff barriers are concerned, products like iron and steel attracts highest number of non-tariff, and followed by its also defense, trade defense related steps are taken in this segment. Now, similarly, if you look at energy, energy also, electrical related energy, the non-tariff barriers are also much higher, whereas the trade defense in this sector, in this particular sector or type is negligible. And the least is observed in case of general purpose machinery and parts thereof. Basically, in the intermediaries form it is much lower. So, similarly, another segment called basic iron steel, these are the area attracts highest number of non-tariff barriers. In short, what we have explained, trade reducing effects of non-tariff barriers is highly heterogeneous, we have observed, and also we have observed this has slowed down the trade and significantly. So, and the differences observed also across the data sources, but therefore we followed only one data sources. So, with this we have actually discussed various facts. Many other facts will keep on adding in our successive classes while discussing different types of non-tariff barriers, like import quota we will discuss, tariff quota, technical standards, anti-dumping duty, countervailing duty, license requirements, custom valuations, etc. We will discuss in detail. As I discussed that there are certain trade defense measures and trade non-tariff measures as trade defense measures and non-tariff barriers. There are largely categorized under WTO negotiations under these heads. So, we will unfold this discussion in detail, like what is these aspects in our next class with a systematic approach. So, I think we will carry forward these types of non-tariff barriers or the non-defense measures to the next class. I think it is clearly understood, and number of objective questions are expected from these sessions, and these are the most important part of the whole module of trade protectionism and strategies. So, with this I think we should stop here. Thank you so much.